again.
Back together again.
Only for a couple of days, unfortunately.
And then someone goes on holiday again.
Not holiday lah. I wish I had something to... No, I'm actually going to go hiking, go to the beach, things that are relaxing and make me happy, and just letting
Take me along.
No, there's no space in the car. Things that will help you ease your mind and your heart as well, because, you don't want to come back to work feeling all pent up.
Okay, you better go.
I'm trying to say that, it's good to be aware of your emotions, so that you're able to identify them, and so that you don't sort of lash out at other people, and you don't project or impose on other people as a result. Because sometimes we do act out on our moods, whether we intend to or not. Yep. So always find a way to take a step back, relax, or even talk to someone, and someone will be talking to.
Yes, and we will be looking at maladaptive behavior today. What is maladaptive behavior, you ask? Well, it's been defined as behavior that interferes with your activities of daily living or working, or ability to adjust to and participate in particular settings. So yes, before you actually display any signs of maladaptive behavior, Andrea, good thing that you're going for this little bit of a break.
Hey!
Huh? No, I mean, it's preventative, right?
Preventive, that's right, that's right. Okay, sticking with our World Happiness Day theme today, we'll be talking with Punitha Gunasegaran, who is a psychologist at Talk Your Heart Out. She's waiting on the line, but first, let's bring you the headlines we'll be following in the next hour.
This is Money Mind with Andrea Heng and Stanley Yeong.
And this is CNA 938. Thank you for joining us. It's World Happiness Day today.
Yay!
You can tell in our voices, can't you? Many factors that can impact our mood, and some of which we can control, some of which we can't. Well, you can control how you react to a certain situation or a person. Now, when you find yourself getting hot and flustered and from an angsty interaction, well, why not step back, clear your mind before deciding to rebut or be too reactive. I can
relate.
I can relate to that, which I should have maybe. But yes, I've been found in those.
Well, you know what they say, awareness is always the best first step, and I think you're on the right track there, Stanley.
Yeah.
Yes, we definitely can't control how people around us behave or how they speak to us, but we can control our own thoughts and feelings, our own reactions, and I'm a firm believer in this. And this will determine how the rest of our day will turn out. It can be a bad day if you do decide to engage in a hostile interaction, or it can be a good or neutral day if you just choose to step back and ignore the situation, put it aside for another day.
But it still lingers, doesn't it?
Then you just process it, throughout the day. Okay. Have some chocolate, French toast, go shopping.
I don't know. We'll ask our guests if those work actually. But it's not just about being reactive that could affect our mood. Now, psychologists say engaging in maladaptive behavior is bad for our mental health too. So what is maladaptive behavior? Well, I did share a little bit of a short definition, but we'll hear from our guest in a while. It's a form of also a behavior, I suppose, that prevents us from making adjustments that are in our own best interest. Examples would maybe include avoidance, withdrawal, passive aggression. There you go, the avoidance bit, right? Because if it lingers, so you talk about processing it. I want to find out more from our guest today as well, Andrea, who is Punitha Gunasegaran, who is a psychologist at Talk Your Heart Out. I've heard of Eat Your Heart Out. Now it's Talk Your Heart Out. They're a Singapore-based therapy platform. Punitha, thank you for joining us today. Warm welcome.
Thank you, Stan. Thank you, Andrea, for having me today.
Oh, I'm delighted with this conversation and, of course, your presence as well. Now, many of us may not be too familiar with what exactly maladaptive behavior is. Please explain that to us, what it means.
Sure, absolutely. Right. So maladaptive behaviors basically come in when we are doing something that is not going to be helpful for us at the end of the day, right? Of course, actually, when we are doing it, it may seem like the most perfect thing to be doing at that point in time, the safest thing, the more comfortable thing. But actually, over time, what it can create is it can create a lot of resentment. It can create a lot of unhappiness. And eventually, that's what affects our mental health in the long term as well. When we continue to engage in behaviors, because it ends up, impacting our relationships at work. it impacts our relationships with our family, with people around us, basically.
And you said, it's great that you brought up the workplace there, Punitha. Let's start with maladaptive behavior there. How can we spot them both for ourselves and for the people around us, the people we work with every day? So how can I identify that Stanley is being maladaptive, for example?
And actually it goes back to something you said earlier, Andrea. You brought about awareness, right? And I think that is the first step, to be honest, to start recognizing, are we engaging in maladaptive behavior? And with the awareness, it comes with understanding what actually it is, right? Stanley, you said it very well, the avoidance, right? Because very importantly, when we are going to engage in a maladaptive behavior, it leads to a lot of avoidance. We don't want to do something, we avoid doing it. And then it comes out in other forms, right? The passive aggressiveness, which is when either we go into a very people-pleasing mode, right? Or the alternative is we go into this aggressive mode where we get so angry that we cannot deal with that particular situation itself. So, and the question is, how do you spot it, right? I think that it doesn't happen overnight, to be honest. And basically it's starting to recognize, are there small signs, changes in people that we are noticing? So for example, someone has started work. They're doing well, they're fine. You realize they're a very cheery, optimistic person. But over time, you recognize, they're getting very jaded, very cynical. Even more than that, maybe what you recognize is that there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of irritation that's coming up very regularly. And these are signs that we need to start taking note of. This is not the person they were when they came in. This person who usually had a very optimistic outlook. Right now, actually, almost every single thing that you ask them, they're acting out, right? They are getting angry, they're getting irritated with you. Other examples can include lower mood, right? So when we talk about, what are the other signs? If you notice that the person is generally very happy in their disposition, right? And right now what's happening is that they come into work, they start avoiding interactions with people, they don't talk to anybody, they just keep very silent, they do their own work, they leave. These are all signs of maladaptive coping mechanisms as well.
And do people, display such behavior? Like you say, it's a way of, trying to go through maybe a difficult situation at the workplace, and that's how they're acting out, and that's how the symptoms are presenting themselves. Is it something they knowingly are doing, or you think it's really something that isn't even obvious to them? It's someone has to point out to them that they are behaving in such a way.
That's right. Sometimes it's very unconscious, to be honest, right? Yes, some people, they make this intentional step, right? That they're going to cut off. But many a time, it's actually not even recognizing that we are doing these things. Because sometimes it's so insidious, right? It starts very small bursts of anger, small bursts of irritation. And over time, we don't even recognize that this is happening on a very regular basis as well.
Are there ways, Punitha, that us as colleagues can help not just identify someone who's adopting a maladaptive behavior, but also just engaging the person and asking, are you okay? Because I think different people will react differently to that question, are you okay, right?
That's right. Yeah. But I think definitely that connection is important, meaning that, if you notice that your coworker is struggling, something is happening, something is not quite right, it's good to just reach out and check in, right? It doesn't mean being too pushy, but it's that genuine concern that we are showing them, especially if it's someone that you've known for a while, and just checking in, hey, are you okay? I've noticed recently that your mood seems to be a little bit different. Is there something you would like to talk about? Is there something that's been bothering you, in fact? And I think it's very important to recognize that some people think that just asking someone, are you okay, means we're being too pushy. But actually, that's not the case, right? We can actually ask them, are you okay? And give them the space to talk and let them know that you're there, and then take a step back. And I think that important step is just reaching out and letting them know that we're there to hear them out.
Yeah. But even, asking, are you okay, probably would you require some form of basic level of connection already, as a certain level of friendship or relationship,
like
right?
a level of bond with that person.
Yeah,
right?
if you don't, then if you ask, are you okay? People might like, okay, I'm not even close. You don't even know me. Why are you asking me? Am I okay? And they might take it to be in a very
almost
negative
offensive.
way.
Yeah.
Who are you to question why that I'm not okay?
That's right. Yeah. And maybe another way is just checking in, just asking the person, how are you doing? Right. Keeping it very general. How have things been for you? Instead of asking, are you okay? Just a general mental health check-in, right? Or just a general well-being check-in, and it's not even, you don't even have to point it out, right? That something is wrong. But perhaps starting off with, how are you doing? How are things going for you?
Kind of like walking past you at the pantry and say, hey, how's it going? Everything okay at your side, kind of thing. I guess that's another. I mean, if you are far removed from that person, it's just a matter of. It may sound like a very day-to-day question in passing, but you don't know how much that means to that person, I suppose.
That's right.
Andrea, I'm wondering if you were to say walk past your boss,
right?
Would you broach that? It sounds like more a boss asking, one of your team members rather than the other way around. How do you bring that up to a boss if you notice something is not quite right?
Yeah.
And I think with management, of course, it's definitely a little bit more trickier. But I think it's also just letting manager know, right? That, you've noticed, especially if it's a comfortable manager, right? You know that it's someone you can talk to. It's just letting them know, right? That this particular person, there seems to be a little bit of a difference. Maybe it's good if we just check in on them once in a while, just to provide that additional support. Maybe it's also rallying closer teammates, right? Sometimes people get so bogged down with work, right? We get so busy with our day-to-day tasks that we just miss it.
Yeah.
But maybe it's letting some of the closer work team know that, maybe something is a bit different. Would you like to check in with them? And leaving it as it is, or just doing a check-in later on.
Yeah, let's not wait till October the 16th, which is our boss's day.
Let's not. It should be an everyday thing. Let's talk about maladaptive behavior in personal relationships now, Punitha. Obviously, because we're closer to the person, we can sort of spot signs of such behavior. I actually recently personally went through something like that, something similar with a friend. And it's the maladaptive behavior, I think, came to a point where even I was personally affected by it and I didn't know how to react. And I think I prioritized my own mental health as opposed to sort of, checking in and seeing whether there were things that were stressing her out, for example, that had led to that behavior. Obviously, I don't think that's necessarily a healthy move. I'm not sure. But how can we work our way around maladaptive behavior in personal relationships?
Right. And I think, again, firstly, it comes off, there are so many different types of maladaptive behavior that can come on, with interpersonal relationships. We see, very common term these days is gaslighting, right? Everybody is talking about that. We talk about, there's a lot of blame going on. There's a lot of denial going on. But I think that, as a start in any interpersonal relationship, it's good to look for these four things. And, in relationships, personal relationships, the Gottman theory calls it the four horsemen. In any situation. So the four horsemen are basically criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Criticism is basically, criticizing the person, of course, for every single thing that they do. Contempt is actually going even stronger, right? It's actually criticizing their personality, who they are as a person. Stonewalling is basically shutting down the avoidance. And defensiveness is basically not being able to receive any feedback or hear anything out from the person. I think this is a good place to start because it helps us to recognize, is this happening in our relationships? And to be honest, we all go back to these default coping mechanisms. It's something that unless we start to take note of, only then can we start to make very slow changes into how we can change in certain relationships as well.
Right. And, if you don't, I think it can spiral pretty much out of control as well. And it might be a point of no return to try to, remedy that relationship. Once we have identified, yes, there is something amiss in someone's behavior, it's straining relations, it's affecting the person's, ability to relate with other people, even to work and daily life. Yeah. How can we remedy it? Would you have any points for us?
Right. And I think, again, starts with the self-awareness. But again, with these things that I mentioned, the criticism, the contempt, the defensiveness, it's firstly starting to recognize how are we feeling in that moment. Yes. The avoidance comes from a place where we don't want to recognize our emotions and what we are feeling in that moment. But by recognizing what is happening to us, so for example, with the defensiveness, a lot of the times our shame is triggered, right? And that's when we avoid, right? We want to shut down, we want to move away, we defend. But by recognizing the shame, what we're actually doing is recognizing that, when the person said this, I felt this way. I felt very shamed. I felt very put down. I felt very criticized. And then it's starting to take a perspective, right? We validate our emotion and we take on the perspective of the other person. Are there other things that this person was perhaps trying to say? Is there another meaning behind it? And of course, the other thing is having a constructive conversation with that person. The other day when you said that, I felt this way. So it's not blaming, it's not saying that, you are always this way. You always criticize me. You always put me down. But it's recognizing what are we feeling in that moment and letting that person know and having a healthy and constructive conversation as to what happened at that particular moment.
Is it fine though if we choose, as the person on the receiving end of that maladaptive behavior, is it totally fine though if we decide to choose to take a step back from the situation instead and take care of our own mental health first?
Absolutely, right? Because sometimes I also recognize that it can be really hard in that moment, isn't it? To hear certain words, things that people are saying. I would say take a break, self-soothe first, right?
Yeah.
Look at what you can do to regulate how you are feeling in that moment. And if you want to, and then come back to that conversation. Because again, I think there are so many layers to it, isn't it, right?
Yeah.
Is this a relationship that you continue, you want to engage, you want to improve? Yes. And then it comes back to having that healthy conversation.
Yeah. I think that's a very important point, whether that bond is worth saving in that sense, in a very brute way of putting it. This has been a very enlightening conversation, Punitha. We really appreciate it. We've all at any point in time had to experience or even projected maladaptive behavior. And here's hoping that, on World Happiness Day, we strive to be better people and get the help that we need as well. We have been speaking on our show with Punitha Gunasegaran, a psychologist at Talk Your Heart Out. It's a Singapore-based therapy platform. Punitha, lovely to have you on the show. Thank you so much again for your insights.
Thank you very much for having me, Andrea.
Thank you.
This is Money Mind with Andrea Heng and Stanley Yeong.